Well, the finance committee today, they've had some glitches. We've had some glitches trying to get the feeds, and they aren't coming through. And then it just froze. And right as they were just talking about, we were just really odd. Well, first we have MP Julien of the NDP. The next we have Pierre Poilievre.
Thank you. Turning to Mr. Julien, who will be followed by Mr. Cumming. Around 6 minutes. Peter, floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Mr. Thompson. Thanks, Ms. Bain, for being here today. We hope that in the midst of this pandemic, your families are, you and your loved ones are safe and healthy. And I wanted to start off by thanking Charity Intelligence for your good work that you do in the in shedding light on charities. I come out of the charitable sector myself, ran a social enterprise and a charitable organization in British Columbia. And so I know the importance of accountability. And so this is where this inquiry from the Finance Committee is so important. I have been used to in the charitable sector of making sure when I applied for government grants that every single box was checked, that there were full financial statements, there was information about board movements. Often in the charitable sector, about a quarter of the charity's work is just making sure that the due diligence is performed and provided to funders, including the federal government. And so this is why it is so inconceivable to the Finance Committee, and why the Finance Committee is continuing this important study, that first off, that we seem to have an inside track and could file a submission to a program the same day it was announced. And secondly, that it sailed through with absolutely no due diligence has been identified in terms of all of the myriad problems, things that should have been a red flag, and things that for any other charity in the country would have meant that there was absolutely no possibility of them being considered for funding. So it just continues to surprise me the extent to which this was pushed through, and our work as Finance Committee is to find out how and why that happened, and we haven't been getting answers so far. I wanted to start off by asking a very simple question. Many people have described the atmosphere inside WE as a climate of fear. We did question the Kilburgers on whether or not they had hired private detectives to intimidate journalists, and they evaded the answer, evaded answering that question. Are you aware of any legal pressure or private detectives, anything like that, between you and we? Have at any point in your honest reporting of what's going on in we, have you felt that there was some kind of pressure coming back?
We've not felt specific pressure. We have received a letter from we based on comments that we've made publicly, but we did not take that to be legal pressure.
Okay, thank you. My second question is about your grading, most recent grading of we. In terms of the demonstrated impact, you rate them as fair. Just reading the actual report itself, there seems to be 5 levels of grading by Charity Intelligence when it comes to judging the impact of charitable organizations. High, good, average, fair, and low. Is it then appropriate to say that fair is actually the second lowest grade that you can give to a charity when it comes to impact?
That's correct.
Okay, and in terms of the transparency of the organization, the financial records, the financial statements are available, as you mentioned, and it's included in your report. I'm interested in knowing, because you've actually spoken about the multiple single-purpose entities, including the We Charity Foundation, which had no assets and was a shell foundation that was the recipient of this untendered contribution agreement. To what extent do you believe the financial statements to be accurate? I'm particularly concerned about how much could be redirected. There seems to be some controversy around the evaluation of goods in kind and how that might lead to transfers between for-profit organizations and the charity. What is your sense, given the information that we've received most recently, about the accuracy of the financial information? And are you concerned about potentially monies being redirected to one of the for-profit entities that are part of this very labyrinthine organization?
The related parties transactions with We Charity providing cash to Me to We and Me to We providing back to We Charity support, which is cash and also donated goods or time. We would like to have greater disclosure about how much of Me to We's contribution to We Charity was cash and how much was donated time. I think the audited financial statements meet all the disclosure requirements on these transactions.
Do you have anything to add, Mr. Thompson?
No, I mean, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, I don't think there's anything inaccurate about their financial statements. We cannot point to that. And as Kate says, they've disclosed what they need to disclose. However, it does leave us with questions that would provide greater clarity and greater assurance for donors.
And that's primarily related to the goods in kind, which is difficult to evaluate and intangible. My next question is around salary information. If it is a little unclear then how many funds or how much has been redirected, and you have flagged the issue of goods in kind, is it possible that the salary information that was disclosed may not be accurate either? In other words, that there may be intangible benefits that go to certain members of We at the highest level, but it may not necessarily be disclosed because of the multiple single-purpose entities and the transfers between for-profit and not-for-profit organizations.
Mr. Julien, to your question, with so many allegations swirling around about the numbers, I believe that donors and the corporate sponsors would be really get a shot of confidence if a international tier 1 firm audit team came in to do the audit on these. The numbers are presented as they are presented. The concerns we saw that we learned only recently were about the US We entities and large volumes. I believe it was 15.8 million US flowing through a similar shell structure, Me to We Foundation, with non-arm's length directors. And the only disclosure on those flow of funds was program spending, program services. So that would, and then because of the under the radar with the co-founder title, there is no disclosure on that 15.8 million US, what proportion of that was paid to anyone, because at that shell, there was no staff and there are no salaries, just the three directors who are not arm's length.
Okay, Peter, we're well over. One last question.
Well, so that's very disturbing that there is that much money in the U.S. entity that doesn't seem to be going to program salaries. Is Charity Intelligence able to delve more deeply into affiliated charities or for-profit companies like the ones in the United States, or do you have the resources to go beyond the Canadian filings?
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
yeah. We've looked at We Charity in the UK, and we did that. You know, that's it. We went through that, and in my assessment, We Charity UK looks clean, looks really good, nice, strong, independent board. A lot of domestic programs, and you know, I couldn't see any of the concerns about the board turnover, the independence of the directors, the interrelated parties at We Charity UK. In the US, we just last night, more entities were raised on Twitter that we look forward to going into.
Okay, we will end that round there, and we'll start with Mr. Cumming, followed by Mr. Fragiskatos. I do want to point out, though, I let that round of questioning go, but we are, I think we are straying. We're really looking into the government spending We Charity and Canada Student Service Grant. There is certainly many questions related to the charity We. I understand that. But our purpose here is to try and find out how this Canada Student Service Grant got awarded and all the criteria surrounding that. We have been getting some answers from government and many other officials, and I would hope we don't stray too far into the charity itself rather than the business that I think the Finance Committee is supposed to be studying. Understand there's some problems there.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Poilievre.
I would only point out that the two issues that you listed are not separate. The awarding of this contribution, this $500 million contribution to the We Charity was by itself suspect to begin with, but now that we learn about the strange labyrinth of We Charity organizations and the peculiar way in which money circulates between the multitude of entities, it does draw a line back to how the government chose this organization and whether or not appropriate due diligence about the recipient group, the program delivery body, was done.
Chair, point of order.
These are not separate issues.
There's a point of order on the floor, Mr. Sabera, but it isn't a point of order. But I'll allow Mr. Poilievre to finish.
Well, it is a point of order, and I'll tell you why. Because you were just telling us about the confines of our study, which this committee adopted, and I'm simply pointing out that the questioning that we're forwarding to the witnesses today, the expert witnesses, is entirely within the mandate of this study. Now, I know that Mr. Sabera is desperate to keep these questions unanswered, and I suspect he'll jump in again to try and cover up and slow the study.
Now we're straying from your point of order, Mr. Poilievre.
Just point out that all of the questions that have been asked today are within the confines of the study, as is the valuable information that Charity Intelligence is sharing. Thank you.
I allowed that round of questionings, but all I'm saying is let's not stray too far and away from the government connection to this charity. That's all I'm saying. Mr. Sabera, you had a point of order.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to express my doubt that Mr. Poilievre's comments were actually a point of order. That sounded much like debate in his own personal views. And as for his comment about questions, there are a lot of questions that have been asked, and let's continue to ask good questions.
And yours is not a point of order in my view. Either. Okay, Mr. Cumming and then Mr. Fragiskatos. We're into 5-minute rounds. James, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try not to stray. It sounds like there's a great concern about that, but it's difficult with this group not to look at the entire group. I thank both of you for coming today and the good work that you do in the charity sector. I know that donors appreciate the work that you do, and thank you for the work that you do. I want to start off with the you had mentioned that when your review of the financial statements, that one of the issues was the bank covenants. And I read the response from WE suggesting that it was because they changed their year end, which was true in 2018, and the issue with covenant was apparent in 2018. But then they had a full fiscal year under their belt for 2019, and it was still the issue with the bank covenant. So just would like to get your response on that. It looked like it was a continual issue. It wasn't just an issue around a change of a year end.
That's an excellent point. To WE's comments or explanation for its bank covenants, it mentioned that the bank covenant was a ratio that may have been affected by fiscal 2018 only being the 8 months, but it would not affect the ratio for fiscal 2019. That was 12 months. We Charity also stated to us publicly in the letter they posted that it was an accounting paperwork, which is a different interpretation of ours to bank covenants.
Right, right. And so when you were looking at the statements, I tried to dig around for the statements for some time, and their 2019 statements weren't on their website. They are now, I believe. They would have had to file their return by February, and you say that they didn't produce financial statements to you till July. Any indication what was the delay? Why did it take so long for you to be able to do your due diligence? And this relates back to me to the government in doing their due diligence, that those statements should have, you would think, if they're filed in February, would be up on site in March, April easily.
We typically likes to write a letter from the executive director before its financial statements. So while it had the financial statements, that just the financials without the management discussion and analysis ready, we wanted to release it all together, and that might have caused the delay in posting.
Okay, and then in capacity, so as we know, it became public domain that they had done some layoffs, and this was roughly about a $65 million charity. If you consider the charity, I know the WE Foundation has no assets, no employees, and this was funneled through that, but there's some inference that WE Charity would be administering this. So a $43 million administrative fee for a charity that would normally have about 65 million worth of revenue for a program that's going to be delivered in 4 months or so. Does that seem a bit odd to you, like to have the capacity to be able to execute on something like that's an enormous amount of capital going to a charity in a very short period of time?
It is. Yes. No. When Mark and Craig said that there was no financial.
So there you go. It just froze up for whatever reason. It's suspended. It's been about an hour. So looks like that meeting got a technical glitch, and that they don't have all the bugs worked out of this Zoom meetings. Though I have all kinds of meetings with my church. Never had an issue. They seem to have quite a bit of technical issues with their committees on Zoom or whatever they're using. Like, subscribe and comment. Have a good day.